Hi everyone, my name is Megan O'Rourke and I'm the Associate Director of Regional Programs for the University of San Diego Alumni Association. We're happy to have you for today's Chicago Torero Club Holiday Cocktail class featuring Sincere Hospitality founder and USD alumnus, Frank Callero, class of '08, and Boulevard Steakhouse lead mixologist, Robert Chamblin. During this time, the Alumni Association staff is continuing our efforts to keep alumni engaged with and connected to the university. Now that we are virtual, we have pivoted to offering programs that are of the greatest need for our alumni. And today, that means providing our alumni the opportunity to learn something new and to have some fun. Today, we will be learning how to make the following 3 cocktails: the Nice List, Spiked Chai, and Mrs. Claus's Martini. Robert will walk us through how to make these drinks, the art of mixology, and will answer any questions that you have about the drinks that you are making or mixology in general. Throughout the program, Frank will offer some background on himself, his businesses, and how alumni can support his efforts during these trying times. And last but not least, please note that this event is meant to be fun and interactive. So please feel free to turn on your camera so we can, 1, see how you're doing with your drinks, and 2, see your smiling faces. Frank, we'll go ahead and get started. I'd like to introduce Frank Callero, class of 2008. And he can take it away and give you a little bit of background on himself.
Hi, everyone. Frank Callero here, coming to you from Chicago. It's where I was born and raised. I had the good fortune to go out to University of San Diego for undergraduate. I'm an '08 grad. For me, being out in California from Chicago was a wonderful change of pace, especially the weather, as you all know. And so I was there for 4 years, loved every minute of it. Post-graduation, came back to be closer to family and friends in Chicago, lived down here in the city. I actually got my JD MBA from a local Chicago institution, Loyola Chicago. And from there, I went into practice law for about 7 years. And during that period of time, I was always looking to be entrepreneurial and figure out kind of the next steps. I always knew that wasn't kind of the long-term plan for me. So I had the crazy idea of buying a building, renovating it, and putting my own restaurant into that. And that's what we have with Boulevard Steakhouse. So I don't know if anyone locally has been here, but we've been open for about 3 years. And most recently kind of pivoted the menu into kind of a steakhouse format, which has been a great success for us. It's been kind of a crazy year, as you can imagine, with COVID and all of those things, which we could talk about a little bit in the future. But to get started here, I want to introduce our lead mixologist, Robert, here at Boulevard Steakhouse. He's going to be the one really putting on the show for you today, helping you guys understand how to make a few cool cocktails and have some fun. So if you have questions for him as we move along here, please jump in and ask. I don't know if you mentioned this, Megan, but I do think if you make sure you put your screen on speaker view, it will make sure that you can see him and us on the big screen so that you can see exactly what he's doing as we kind of move along here. Feel free to pepper in questions as we go. And with that, I'll kick it off to you, Robert.
How's it going, everyone? I'm Robert. We're going to start with a bourbon cocktail. It is a very holiday forward, like spicy, sweet cocktail. The first thing we're going to do is talk about mise en place, though. It's going to be stirred. So if you have something to stir in, it can be just a separate glass from the one you're going to drink in, or it can be a Yari. It can be a mixing glass. If you have a shaker, you can always use the shaker itself to stir in. And with that said, we're going to make a syrup really quick. So this requires a honey syrup. I'm just going to start with regular honey. And a little bit of water. Get yourself either a cup, measuring cup, or just something you have a standard measure with. I'm going to use an 8-ounce deli so that I know I'm getting 8 ounces of water, because I've got 12 ounces of honey and I want a little more honey than water. You could do a smaller amount of syrup. So let's say you just want to do enough to make this one cocktail. Do like 2 tablespoons of honey, and you'll use 2 tablespoons of water. You want to mix these together and then heat them up. It should just take a few seconds. Use a spoon to stir them up. And you just want to get them until they're completely incorporated. So I realize you might have to grab like some hot water, heat it up, or go to the stovetop. I'll do this slow so you have time to follow along.
So just to be clear, why don't you repeat that? We're putting 8 ounces of water?
We're putting 8 ounces of water in with 12 ounces of honey, or like I said, 2 to 1 is a perfect ratio. Like I'm doing this a little bit on the heavy side, or a little bit on the light side rather. It's really all just a taste. You're not going to get a whole lot of difference between the 1.5 to 2 versus 2.5 to 2. Ultimately, you just want to be close to about 2 times as much honey as water. Once you've got that going, I'm going to heat it up a little bit.
So I don't know if you can see on the screen, we've got a little induction burner, but basically he's mixed up 8 ounces of water with about, 12 ounces of honey, you said?
12 ounces of honey.
12 ounces of honey. Stir that together. And then if you could put that on a stove and just get it heated a little bit.
I jumped past this. It might be useful to grab like a tea kettle or something you get hot water from. That way you don't have to worry with the stove. But if you're nearby the stove, that works too. I'm going to talk about some more mise en place. So if you're just like gathering things you need for this, don't worry, I'll go slow. So this is going to be bourbon based. I'm going to use Bullet for this one. You could use anything, just not like Jack Daniels or Southern Comfort or like a mixed blended Jameson. Don't use anything blended because it's going to be sweet already and you're going to end up with a really sweet cocktail. The next ingredient is a little bit of apple cider vinegar. I go for one that's always like kind of cloudy because it's got some cinnamon in there. It's got more apple flavor. You can tell just by looking at it. It's more opaque. Some of them have like a clear look. You don't want that. And finally, I'm going to use Angostura or old-fashioned bitters. They don't have to be Angostura brand. Fee Brothers makes a great old-fashioned bitters. And while my honey heats up, I'm just going to stir a little bit. And it's already ready. So that's about how long that takes. Go ahead and get your honey mixture into a glass or something you can pour from. I'm just going to use a industry standard deli. The first part is going to be actually before we,
everyone has their,
if you have a jigger, I see some of you do.
That's a true bartender.
Yeah. So jiggers make it really easy to measure specific volumes. If you don't have one, you can follow along. I'll say parts as opposed to ounces, so that you know 1.5 ounces. You can just establish your own parts. So 2 tablespoons or 1/4 of a cup could be your 1 part. I'm going to say 2 parts of whiskey, for instance. So if you don't have a jigger, do 2 of I would say 1/4 cup if you're doing cups. So it's actually really strong. Hold on.
I like a shot glass.
Yeah, a shot glass is great. But you're just going to do 2 parts of your whiskey, whatever your parts may be.
So your parts are, you're using ounces.
I'm using ounces.
So that'll be 2
jiggers,
ounces for you.
And if you're using a jigger, it's that big side and go all the way up. If there's 2 of you, do it twice. The next step is going to be apple cider vinegar. For each 1 cocktail, I'll use a 1/4 of an ounce, which is equivalent to a teaspoon, or if you're using a dasher, which a lot of people, I may have mentioned dashes on the instructions. It would be a good 2 dashes, maybe 3 dashes. The vinegar is going to add acidity, which is important in getting a balanced cocktail, especially when you're using honey. So I'm going to add a 1/2 ounce of our honey syrup mixture we made. There you go. We've got just honey and vinegar. Next thing is going to be the Angostura bitters. If you buy this from a store, it'll have a little cap that allows you to pour out in dashes. If you don't, if you were to like have a small amount in a glass, or if you didn't get the kind with the dasher on top, sometimes you get like homemade ones that have a little screw cap. Just use a teaspoon. 1 teaspoon is a little heavy. I would use a little less than a teaspoon. But I'm gonna do 2 dashes if you have the dasher. Finally, the whiskey. It's gonna be 2 parts. So just to review, we did 2 parts whiskey, 2 dashes of Angostura. And if you want a really strong drink, feel free to just pour as much as you want in here. Keeping in mind that you need the balance of the ingredients to make the flavors work right. So everything's in there. I'm gonna grab some ice.
You walk them through a little bit about why you don't put the ice in first and you make the cocktail first.
So if I were to put ice in my mixing glass first, then pour in whiskey, it starts diluting immediately. With every ingredient you add, it's diluting more. You're getting a weaker drink and your flavors are becoming imbalanced. And on top of that, it's not as much of an issue, but you will have splash. Like as you pour in over ice, things are gonna splash away. You're gonna lose some of the whiskey. You're gonna lose some of the bitters. So with that in mind, when you pour your ice in, just cover it with your hand. Make sure you're not making a mess anywhere. And then if you're not using a mixing glass, I actually suggest using like a straw to stir. If you have a proper bar spoon, that is best. And this is a little technique lesson. So if you're trying to become a better bartender at home, the way to stir your cocktails is not to grab the spoon and just spin it around like that. I grab with my pinky and ring finger behind the spoon, index and middle finger in front of the spoon. And then you push with your lower fingers and pull with your upper fingers. It takes a lot of practice. You probably won't get it this quickly, but ultimately you're stirring really fast. What you want to see is you'll start out with ice kind of peeking over your drink, and you want that ice to melt down to its level. It's technically a 60% dilution, 30% dilution. So you want to go to about 60% full on the glass. This one should get served in a rocks or old-fashioned glass. Fill your glass up with a little bit of ice. Normally, I would do this the other way. I would pour the drink in, then add the ice. But you're working at home. It's some things can be skipped. If you've got a strainer or another glass, you can use just to hold back the ice and pour in your drink. I can't see everyone, so I can't tell if everyone's like at this point yet, but it looks like some people are.
I see some straining going on.
I see some straining going on, yeah. By the way, the most important item you'll need for a Zoom bartending class, really nice shoes. Frank brought really nice shoes.
You know,
we're not going to see anything.
You can't see them, but they're solid.
So it's the end result should be bitter with a little clove spice, very holiday-like, and then sweet with honey, sticky even, and finally a little bit of tartness from the vinegar. The vinegar is like really important to kind of balance it all out. If you don't have that tartness, you don't comprehend all the flavor.
I always find it interesting that you put the bitters in kind of as part of the overall mixture of the drink rather than adding them on top after, which I see a lot of people do. So I think that's another kind of tip at home is, you know, the bitters are part of your overall concoction of the drink and should be done with everything else. And then you're not just adding it on top kind of after the fact, right?
Yeah, ideally all ingredients should go in, and in a perfect world, you could let them sit for a few minutes before you start adding ice and stirring. Because if you think of like chemistry class, things are gonna bond, it's gonna become one liquid. It's a new chemical formula. So at that point, you want to dilute it. You don't want to dilute it and then add in something that's just gonna sit on top. It's at a different volume, or it's a different temperature. So it doesn't want to bind and mix in as much. Also, there is something to be said for adding bitters on top of a drink for aroma, but you're just going to get that in the aroma and the first few sips, and then it's gone. If you put it in the drink, it really blends the flavor in through the concoction much more evenly.
Nice. Well, hopefully everyone successfully made the first drink. That one is probably a little bit complex with the heated beginning there, but we also circulated kind of the recipe to everyone. So if you want to give it another go at home, you know, please feel free and let us know how it turns out.
Hey, quick question for you guys. You talked about bitters a little bit, but someone else asked any other garnish for this drink. Does the same rule apply of what you just went through, or are we missing something?
So I'll admit I kind of nerves took over and I didn't mention the garnish. There is a garnish for this drink. What you want to do is get some cinnamon and brown sugar. I've already mixed it up here, or I bought a mix of cinnamon sugar, which you can do, it's perfectly fine. But I find that if you blend like coarse cinnamon and sugar, it's really nice. And then take a cup or a bowl. Let's do this right. Sprinkle a little bit in. And then you can either take a knife or take a lemon.
Well, he's grabbing that just so everyone can see. All it is your basic cinnamon from your grocery store.
So, and this is a key move for all garnishing. You're going to take a lemon, either a wedge or a whole half like I have, and rub it around the outside of your glass, about 3/4 of the way. Don't want to go all the way around because that's Applebee's style. You want to be a little bit better than that. Give your glass a spin. And then you have your rimmed glass. I apologize, I should have mentioned this earlier, because now if you were to take a sip, you get a little bite of cinnamon, a little bite of sugar, sweetens everything up a little bit more, and you actually perceive a little bit more apple from the apple cider vinegar when you have cinnamon and sugar to help that. So,
and it looks pretty, right?
Yeah. Although personally, I think this is a bit too much. I would drink it without the garnish because it's a little sweeter this way. That's why I always suggest garnishing around like 3/4 of the rim, not the whole rim. So you have that option of drinking it straight.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. So before we move, everyone can enjoy their drink and start to get their ingredients prepped for the next one. But before I ask you a quick question, Frank, about your business, we do have a question about the chai. What do we need to prep the chai mix? Is it actual tea with sugar, or what is?
So I'm a big fan of chai concentrates. It's just brewed chai. You don't have to get like a super strong one or anything. You can literally just take a tea packet and brew it. Instead of 3 minutes, go 5 minutes. What we're gonna do with this is exactly the same we did with the honey. We're just gonna warm it up a little bit. We're not gonna like boil it or anything like that. Warm it up, and we're gonna throw some demerara sugar in there. If you don't have demerara sugar, if you have just white sugar, that's fine. We just wanna sweeten it a little bit. Rum itself is gonna be blended with this. Rum is made from sugar cane. I always try to like limit the amount of sugar in a cocktail. So this one is really to taste. I like to do 1 part to 1.5 parts sugar to chai. That way you'll get not a super sweet chai. You'll still taste all that black tea or that clove, cinnamon. And we'll just warm this up and throw a little bit of sugar in there, dissolve it, and then we're ready to go.
So if you have the concentrate, you can warm the concentrate up directly.
Exactly.
If you have just a tea bag, you can get the teapot going so that you have warm water ready to then stew the chai bag in the water.
Exactly. And if you're using a tea bag, add the sugar before you add the hot water. It just saves you a step of mixing things in. Just add your sugar on top of your tea bag. I would do 2 teaspoons for like a regular cup that would go with it's probably 6 ounces that would go with the tea bag. So 2 teaspoons of sugar, 6 ounces of hot water, and tea bag. Or you could use this and the same amount of sugar for 6 ounces.
Great. Thank you. Okay, one last question about the first drink before we go into the next is, what is the ratio of cinnamon to sugar for the first garnish? Was it 1-to-1?
Equal parts, but it's also like if you've ever made brown sugar cinnamon at home for garnishing on French toast, or it's really to taste. So like, let's say you mix a little bit too much cinnamon in there, just add some sugar until you like it. It's all, I mean, it goes great as a seasoning at home. You're not gonna like throw it out when you're done with the cocktail. So I say 1-to-1 to start. And then if that's not working for you, find the right balance. Some people might find that it's too cinnamon forward, or like me, that it's too sweet. I bought the store-bought. It's literally 1-to-1 sugar and cinnamon. The other thing you can do is grate fresh cinnamon, which if you really don't like, if you don't want it to be that sweet, the grated fresh cinnamon is going to be much more potent.
Awesome.
Great.
Alrighty. Well, before we jump into the next drink, Frank, can you talk a little bit more about being an entrepreneur and especially in the hospitality industry? So it's no easy task, especially during a pandemic. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, can kind of go any direction you want me to go with that question. Really, we started the restaurant as kind of a passion project with my cousin and my wife. We're all 3 of us are partners, so it was a family affair. And it was one of those things where we saw an opportunity to come into a really growing industry in the city of Chicago and put our spin on it. I've been a real estate guy my entire life. I was a real estate attorney. And so it was really exciting for me to kind of be able to build out a space. And what we like to say here at Boulevard is we're trying to create an experience for our guests, right? So I used kind of my real estate background to try to design and develop a concept that was very experiential, right? It wasn't just about the food or just about the cocktails, but really the entire environment when you walk in the door. We wanted to kind of transport you into kind of this 1950s Sunset Boulevard, Old Hollywood vibe. And that's kind of what we've created here at Boulevard. The actual business itself was a huge learning curve. I came from a non-restaurant background at all. So for me, it was really exciting and fun and interesting and difficult to kind of figure out this industry and learn how it works. And the goal was to create kind of a foundation and to see if we can kind of create a real business that we can expand, in the future. And so with Boulevard, it was kind of our test case. We built the foundation. And I think we're about 3 years in now, and everything was really firing in all cylinders, and the business was kind of the best that ever was. And then of course, COVID hits, right? And so I think that was an interesting experience to go through something. Our business was so directly impacted. Everyone was personally impacted. I know a lot of other businesses were impacted, but the restaurant industry in particular was just really decimated. And so, you can pack up your bags and leave, or you can try to, pivot and fight through it. And I think the industry has been really resilient. And I think a lot of people have been continuing to fight through it and do the best they can. We're really lucky here at Boulevard because we actually own the property in which we're operating. So our overhead costs are a lot lower than some of the other restaurants in the neighborhood and so forth that have really high rents, which has been helpful. But yeah, so we actually decided, we reopened earlier this year, and Chicago just went through this big shutdown again. And so we ended up just deciding to kind of hibernate for the winter and kind of get through the next few months here. And we're excited about kind of reopening next spring with the vaccination coming and all the good stuff coming down the pipeline. We're really excited about 2021. And I think I'm optimistic that people in Chicago are going to be dying to get out and kind of get back to normal life. So we're really excited about that. But I would say if you guys have local restaurants or vendors or shops, please shop at them. I think you don't understand how far it goes for a lot of those people to get their community support. So yeah, but we're still we're excited to be here. We're excited about next year, and I think we can roll into the next cocktail if everyone's ready. Cool. All right, so this one is called Spiked Chai. The ingredients are going to be 2 ounces of spiced rum, which could, if you don't have a spiced rum, you could mix 1.5 ounces of dark rum with 3/4 of an ounce of white rum. The next ingredient is going to be 1.5 ounces of chai. And Robert just kind of went through how to create that. We'll walk you through that step again. And then we're going to do 3/4 of an ounce of a nut or oat milk if you have that available. So with that, I'll let you kick off the chai.
I'll just pull up the ingredients so you can see them real quick. I've got oat milk. I've got a chai concentrate. To make that, I'm going to use some sugar in the raw, which is pretty easy to find, but you can use regular sugar if you want. I just like the caramel flavor that comes out of this. And all right. First thing is to make the syrup. I'm going to use 1.5 to 1. So I'm going to do 8 ounces, which is my super fancy 8-ounce measuring cup.
That is the measuring cup of the restaurant industry.
Yes. And I'll start heating that up now.
You want to show them the pan to show them to show you put it in.
So I'm going in a little saucepan. The smaller the better, because the fun thing about these cocktails is you're not really preparing for a bunch of people this holiday, hopefully. You might just be making for a couple people at home or for yourself. So you can make very small amounts of the syrups and you can pay more attention to the cocktail itself. As I warm up that chai, I'm gonna put some sugar into it. And I'm gonna eyeball it because I like mine a little less sweet. If you just look at the amount that you put in of chai, it should be about 1/3 of that of sugar. I personally am gonna go a little less than 1/3. And that's the other thing is, you're making these cocktails for yourself. So make them for yourself. Don't worry about pleasing everybody. I know a lot of people who like a spicier drink, a lot of people who like a sweeter drink or a more fruit forward drink. This holiday, we all get to kind of please ourselves.
Question for you. Do we need the sugar if our chai tea is already sweetened?
No, if your chai tea is sweetened, you should be fine. The sugar will add a little bit of viscosity. You might lose a little viscosity with a pre-sweetened one. It depends on what they used as the sweetener, and I don't know what brand in particular, but it really isn't an issue. This cocktail comes out with kind of the spirit of eggnog. It's milky, but it's not too thick. You don't want it to be too thick. And then another note on the rums, I put spiced rum because everyone can get spiced rum. It's easy to get, and it's one bottle that has everything you need. If you like rum, if you're like a rum person, go for that favorite dark rum, that Jamaican rum, that Barbados rum, something that you want in particular, and just cut it with a little bit of a clear rum. The only problem being that a dark one is going to be too sweet. It'll really overpower the cocktail with that sweet plantain, that sweet sugar cane flavor. So I'm going to use Sailor Jerry. I think everyone can get Sailor Jerry wherever you go. And I'm going to do 2 parts. 2 parts of good old Sailor Jerry.
2 parts in our case is 2 ounces.
2 ounces in our case. Yet again, I think 1/4 of a cup is a good place to go if you don't have a jigger. And my syrup is almost ready. While that finishes, I'll tell you one cool thing you can do with this cocktail, if you are serving it for guests, is either a dash of green food coloring or a dash of pistachio jello mix, which is a weird one, but it looks like a Grinch cocktail at the end of the day. So I'm going to take my chai and do 1.5 ounces, 1.5 parts. It's very hot still, but like as you shake it, it will cool down. And my oat milk. The reason I chose oat milk is it doesn't curdle. Sometimes your dairy milks will curdle or at least separate when mixed with alcohol, and you don't want that. I'm gonna do 3/4 with the dairy substitute. Yet again, you can do this as, it's like coffee. If you want a lighter coffee, add a little more milk to it. I'm gonna ice it up. And there are 2 things I'm gonna talk about while I do this. The shake is important. So you want to shake out, not down. Never shake like this. I'm doing it now. Always shake out. And if you have the coordination, shake out and up. So the reason you want to shake out and up is you're going to get the ice moving in a circular direction. And that's going to whip air into it. As opposed to back and forth, it's just going to crush your ice. You want to whip air into your drink. It's almost the same as like making it more effervescent. You should see some bubbles at the end of it.
That's it. I didn't even know that one.
So I don't know if you can see down there, but it's frothy and foamy. And that's the idea. I see some nice shakes. Because we're all using different chai concentrates or chai blends, you might want to taste it before you pour it, see if you need to add more rum. I think we're spot on. And this one should be served up, which just means in a glass with a stem and no ice. You don't want it to dilute any more than it already is. If you don't have a strainer, put your shaker back together and just barely open it.
Good. Do you have a garnish for this one?
The garnish is actually the same garnish as the last one, but instead of putting it on the rim, just sprinkle it on top. So I'm just going to take a pinch of this. The difference there is that you're going to get a little whiff of it as you put it up to your mouth, as opposed to just tasting it on your tongue. And you might not taste it as much, but like, it smells like cinnamon sugar right now. Steve, you want to try this?
What?
Do you want to try this one?
Of course I will. It's good.
We missed what an individual missed what the garnish was. Can you repeat that?
Oh, so it's the same cinnamon sugar that we made for the previous cocktail, but instead of putting it on the rim, we're just going to sprinkle it on top of the drink. And then that provides an aroma, which is nice. I see a really nice one there in a martini glass. Yeah. I hope you all enjoy. I'll hand this back over to Frank.
Well done. Number 2 down.
Awesome. Thank you so much for letting us do that. Again, you guys, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we'll ask them as we go. So Frank, what is something else that individuals can know about you and your business? So you mentioned that you were closed down, you're hibernating for winter, but you're going to open back up. And one thing I need to do a little plug is thank you to all the Chicago Torero Club committee members and president who are on this call. One event that we like to do every year is a normal in-person networking event at Boulevard. So I saw a handful of you mention that you're going to check out after the pandemic. Well, hopefully we all can do an event there together in person. But Frank, why don't you tell us about some other things that are coming down the pipeline for you?
Yeah, no, we appreciate that. We love the support. And I think we did a cocktail party with the USD Chicago alumni last year, which was a lot of fun. And I think people had hopefully had a good time. So yeah, you know, crazily enough, even with the pandemic, we decided to expand and open a second restaurant. So we're currently under construction on number 2. It's named Rosemary, and it's just a couple blocks away from Boulevard. We actually partnered with a Top Chef winner, Joe Flam, who won the show a couple years ago. He's a local Chicago guy from the South Side. He's got a big Italian family just like me, so we hit it off. And he cooks really, really amazing Italian food. And what's really interesting about him is his wife is Croatian. So Rosemary is actually going to be a combination of Italian Croatian food, kind of from the areas around the Adriatic Sea. And we pre-pandemic took a couple of trips over to Croatia with him and had a lot of fun kind of experiencing the culture and getting ready for number 2. So that one's under construction. We're hoping to open in April of 2021. So kind of right into the summer of next year. It's hopefully going to be a really fun spot. And I'm excited for any local people or any USD alum who travel in to come check us out. We're in the West Loop Fulton Market area. So if you're familiar, it's a really up and coming area of the city, with tons of development and a lot of fun energy. So should be pretty fun next summer.
Awesome. Well, I think we're ready for drink number 3.
Let's do it. All right. So this one is going to be the Miss Claus Martini. And to start, I'll let Robert kind of just go through the parts here. I think we've got 1 ounce vodka, 3/4 ounce chocolates. I'm sorry, that was
there's a typo on my part. If you got this sheet, it says chocolate schnapps. It's peppermint schnapps. The first sheet that went out said peppermint schnapps. So if you have chocolate schnapps, which is very hard to find, it's going to be delicious. Yeah, no, I've never seen it. It would be delicious, I'm sure.
So
but peppermint schnapps.
1 ounce vodka, 3/4 ounce peppermint schnapps, 1/4 ounce chocolate liqueur, 1/4 ounce half and half, and then 1/4 ounce simple syrup, right?
Yes.
And so take it away. I'll let you rock and roll.
So this one's the most like typical holiday cocktail, I would say, because peppermint, chocolate, and it is incorporating schnapps, which I think a lot of people only drink if they ever drink around the holidays. So it's a martini, which means 2 things. That shake has to be perfect, like I said, out and up, and it's going to go in a martini glass. I'm going to bring it up now because we're going to garnish this one in a little bit more of a complex way. I've got some peppermint candies, just the typical. You could use candy canes if you want, but these are a little easier for what I'm doing. First thing, I'm going to put them in a Ziploc baggie. You've probably done this before for candy or something, but we want to be a little bit more fine. So I'm going to use my muddler. You can use, I'll actually do this on a different surface so it doesn't tip it down.
Can you see it on the camera?
Yeah. So you can see, I'm just going to whack them. I'm going to move them elsewhere so you don't hear a horrible sound while I whack them. But a few seconds later, and we have a nice powder. I don't know if you can see that. So I would take that and just put that into a little deli. We're gonna do all this before we even start making the drink because we don't want to dilute our cocktail any more than normal. I'm gonna use another lemon around the edge, just half this time. And
first time I've ever seen a peppermint candy rimmed cocktail.
In the 80s, they did this with Pop Rocks. It was very popular. So you just want a few candy pieces around your rim.
Quick question.
Yeah.
Abby asked, is there a reason why you use lemon?
Citrus works great. So lemon, lime, or grapefruit. Orange, not so much. It's not sticky enough. And if you don't have citrus, we're going to make a simple syrup in a second. Simple syrup is a great substitute. So what you do is the same thing. It's 1-to-1 sugar and water. We're going to do that. I would put it in a glass and just rim the glass with a little bit of that, drip it off. It's sticky. But the point of the citrus is just that it sticks. You get your garnish to stick to the rim that way. Doesn't have to be lemon. If you were making a margarita, you'd be kind of committing a mortal sin to use lemon. You'd want to use lime for that one. So I always go by the rule of whatever citrus goes in the cocktail is what you should use to rim it. However, we're not using citrus in these cocktails, so I just grabbed a lemon for all purposes. On to the syrup, the sweetener for this one. Everything in this is sweet, but to start, I'm going to do 1 part sugar. You can do a tablespoon or a teaspoon. I'm using 16 ounces just because I can never have enough simple.
And again, you poured that into our
into a sauce pot, little sauce pot.
Give them a view of that guy.
And then equal parts water. So however much sugar you put in there, put in the same amount of water. Start that to heat, and we'll start building our cocktail.
So if someone was using their stove at home, would it just be on medium heat?
Yeah, you don't want to boil. It wouldn't hurt you to boil, but you don't need to do that. You just want to dissolve the water. Solubility is the big lesson here. You could just throw the sugar into the vodka that we're going to use. Some of it would dissolve, but you get granularity. You taste that in there. It wouldn't all the way dissolve. Heating it up ahead of time gets you a nice, smooth, crystal clear, fine syrup. And that goes with the honey. It goes with the chai. You could just add sugar and those ingredients, or honey and water. Particularly with honey, if I were to make a drink with just honey and no water in it, I would shake it, pour it out, and then there'd be a bunch of honey left on the rim, and my drink wouldn't be sweet. So this is going to keep heating for a second. I'm going to add 1 ounce of vodka, or 1 part of vodka. I'm using Chicago Handmade because we're in Chicago. I'm going to do 3/4 peppermint schnapps. You could do a half. It would be fine. But for the sake of making this a true holiday cocktail, I want it to be peppermint in your face. A drinkable candy cane. I'm going to add some half and half. You could use whole, heavy whipping cream or whole milk, but I find half and half does the job for me. And you might have half and half around the house, less likely to have heavy whipping cream. So the half and half is just going to be a half ounce, I think? 1/4 ounce, I said. 1/4 ounce. And that'll go a long way. Grab my chocolate. Yeah, it's just.
Robert just ran to get some chocolate. He'll be right back. Hopefully everyone is following along at home. Is he going at a good pace so far? Thumbs up. Cool.
Oh, a question that came in was, can I use agave syrup instead of simple sugar?
That is a question for Robert.
And I want you to answer. No, I'm kidding. All right, we'll wait for
Can we use
Robert.
agave syrup instead of simple syrup?
Always. Yeah.
Always is the answer. That didn't come from Robert. That was
Yeah, of course, of course.
No, agave does have a distinct flavor, but it's a lot of people find it to be the proper sweetener for a lot of things, whether it be a health reason or just preference. So I'm gonna do a 1/4 ounce of creme de cacao. You could use Godiva's chocolate liqueur. Any chocolate liqueur is fine. I like Tibusuja because it's dairy free, which is always good. And finally, I think my simple syrup is ready to go. Quick stir.
I'm gonna give them a show what it should look like.
While it's still heating, it's got some cloudiness to it, but it'll clear out once it cools off. All right, a 1/4 ounce of our simple syrup to sweeten. This is another one you could add food coloring to. A little dash of red food coloring would go a great long way for that.
And if they did that, would it just kind of cloud throughout the drink, or would it turn the whole drink red?
My suggestion for that would be a dash right in there before the shaker. You shake it, it'll mix completely. It'll be a solid color. If you wanted, you could do, I'll show you a cool way to apply it after the fact in a second. So shaking, remember shaking out. And up. This time I'm going to strain properly. This is a 2-stage strain. I'm going to use a Hawthorne strainer, which looks like this. If you bought a shaker, yours probably has one built in on top. It's going to get the larger chunks out. And I'm going to use a fine mesh or bucket strainer. This is mostly used for like tea brewing and cocktails. This is going to get all of those little shaken shrapnel-like pieces of ice out of the drink. I think that this one in particular would benefit from having a clean mouthfeel. If you drink martinis, you probably go to some bars and sometimes they have like ice chips on top and sometimes they don't. Those ice chips are great for keeping your drink cold, but they also dilute it a little bit more. And then you end up biting on things and they numb your tongue. So if you're drinking martinis and you kind of don't really care to taste all the little intricacies of the vodka, that's great. If you want to taste every last little bit, double strain it. You'll have more of your taste buds available. It's minty.
Give it a go.
It tastes like the holidays.
Oh, it definitely tastes like the holidays. There you go.
Definitely servable to people. It looks cool with the white foam. I do think it would benefit from having a little red dash. So what I'm going to do is, there's 2 ways we can do this. I'll show you. Would you mind holding the laptop up above the drink?
Sure.
He's going to lift me up real quick. Perfect. So I can hold my thumb over my dasher, put a few drops in there. With a straw or a toothpick, just swirl in the color, kind of diluting a little bit faster than I want. But with food coloring, it will work a little faster. These are good. Spiral. With food coloring, it is more of a spiral shape.
We missed a little bit of what you were saying while you were doing it. The sound cut out. Do you mind repeating?
So if I had food coloring, which I don't, I was using bitters, 3 drops and then spiral them, and they'll kind of stay together in a spiral form. The bitters want to kind of disperse and become part of the drink. So that happened. But it actually looks pretty cool. And I tasted it again, and it tastes even more like spicy, like a little more like clove and cinnamon. Overall, still a very mint-forward cocktail. And that one is good to go.
Cool. Thank you very much, Robert. That was good. Are there any other questions on the cocktails that we could answer? Or any bartending questions? Are
you using white chocolate liqueur?
I'm not, but white chocolate would be perfect for that cocktail. Like I said, I have an affinity for dairy-free chocolate liqueurs. I find that they, like, you can serve them to everyone, and if I were to make a bunch of this cocktail, it would be great later at night, as opposed, like, it would last through the night if I were making a punch-style cocktail. The only thing to watch out with those white chocolate liqueurs, Godiva liqueur, some of them have dairy in them, so you do want to, like, make that drink, serve it, and drink it. You don't want to set it out for people to kind of ladle out.
Okay, another follow-up question. I have 2. One is, what is the best, this was written in, what is the best all-purpose muddler for cocktails, wood or plastic, and the length?
Plastic. I'm a big fan of plastic. Wood is fine. There are some benefits to wood, but wood carries germs. Wood doesn't clean all the way fully, and it also will deteriorate over time and eventually splinter and crack. And then when it cracks open, you're left with all this mildew and gross stuff within your muddler. Plastic, that's never going to happen. And if you get a good one, it's not going to break under any circumstances. I suggest Cocktail Kingdom. This one I think is like $4 on there right now. It's, I would say, probably around 11 inches, maybe a foot long. You don't need all of that, but you definitely need more than 9 inches. Let's say you want to muddle something in your shaker. You don't want to stick your hand down inside the drink to do it. You want to be able to do that. Having said that, there's no, like, it's not the most important thing in the world. You can use a lot of different things as muddlers. And they do make a lot of different plastic ones. I just do highly advise against wooden muddlers. And stoneware muddlers. Don't get a marble or granite muddler. It might break. They do make them, and they're just for show.
And Robert mentioned the website Cocktail Kingdom. We actually purchased a bunch of our barware at Boulevard from that website, because they just got a really quality level of bar smallwares, and a lot of it's stylistic. So it's kind of better than your average kind of smallwares, if you will. So cocktailkingdom.com. It's an interesting place to go. Yeah.
There's another, there's a brand called Barfly that you can buy on there. They'll get you that muddler in any color you want. So like if appearance or aesthetic is a concern, Barfly is the way to go.
Alrighty, and this is for both of you, is what is your favorite cocktail served at Boulevard, and do you change seasonally?
You first.
Yeah, I love a good old fashioned, and Robert makes, he created, so at Boulevard, we're a classic American steakhouse, so we really stuck with the classic cocktails on our main cocktail list. But everything has been kind of reinvented and updated by Robert. And so his version of the old fashioned here at Boulevard is killer. Absolutely love it.
Yeah. I wanted you to go first because if I'm being honest, it's the old fashioned as well. But I have a close second. We have one called Churchill's Breakfast, and it is a twist on a classic concept, which is that Churchill, when he visited America, would have his breakfast brought to him on these 2 silver trays, and it was a lot of food, 2 trays worth, and it would finish with a whiskey and soda and a cigar for breakfast every day. So to encapsulate that, I have a Scotch cocktail. It's essentially a Scotch Manhattan with coffee-infused bitters, for breakfast. Pistachio and cinnamon smoke, also for breakfast. Palo Santo, which is a pine wood from Peru, a Peruvian pine wood, for like the cigar aroma. And we smoke the glass, serve it on a silver tray, and flip it in front of the guests. So it hits you with this aroma of cigar and breakfast, and then you drink it and you get whiskey and a little bit of coffee, and it's a whole adventure. And then even the garnish is a cherry that's been smoked in that same blend of smoke, and then it's got a little salt, and it like kind of it's salt from the Celtic Sea, so it's like it takes you on this little journey, and it's layered experience. And then for the old fashioned that he mentioned, like you can all make a great old fashioned at home if you look up that classic recipe for muddling an old fashioned with sugar cubes. You do sugar cubes, a little bit of water, and you muddle that to make your syrup like we did with sugar and water. The key is to find a bitter or a spirit that you like and replace the water with it. So you're making a stronger old fashioned. I prefer Zucca. It's my favorite. So you're muddling sugar with an Amaro, like a strong bitter flavor. And then you're blending whiskey with it. So you get a huge depth of flavor. You get the bitterness. And then because you're experiencing so much bitter, the sweet part of your tongue experiences the corn sweetness of bourbon. And it's like that if I could give one key to anyone trying to create cocktails on their own, it's don't be afraid to match bitter with your sweet to make it more sweet or more flavorful.
Love it.
We have 2 more questions if you guys have the time.
Sure.
All right. How often are you testing new recipes?
Yeah, so we try to keep probably 5 core cocktails on the list at all times. And then there's 4 that will rotate seasonally. So usually once a quarter, we'll go through a process where Robert and the team will, they're always kind of creating cocktails throughout that quarter. And then at the very beginning of the next one, we'll test them, figure out what ones make sense for the season, make sense for the menu, make sense if chef were to update any of the food items. And then we'll kind of supplement those. In addition, Robert's always doing fun things with the guests as far as kind of, we call it dealer's choice. So someone may not want something from the menu. They'll say, hey, I want these flavor profiles. And Robert will kind of on the fly put it together. And he's come up with actually some cool cocktails that we've ultimately put on the menu or become fan favorites over the years. So it's pretty cool.
And I suggest you do that. If you have a cocktail bar that you prefer, or like a place where the bartender, you're like, I love the way he makes drinks, and you want to experiment at all, like just go tell him what you're looking for. Say, I want something fruity, or I'm really in a passion fruit mood, or I'm really in like a vanilla mood, and see what they can do. And like you might have helped that bartender put a new cocktail on the menu at their restaurant, and then you can go get that cocktail for even better price.
Very cool. Okay, and the very last question is, are you open for takeout right now? And if so, can you get cocktails to go? Because Spencer and his friend really want that. So do you have that option?
That's awesome. Unfortunately, we're not currently doing takeout. But if we do it, we will make sure to send out a newsletter and post it on social media. So please follow us. We're at Boulevard Chicago. That's BLVD Chicago. And you can stay up to date kind of on what we're doing. The website is boulevardchicago.com, and you can sign up for our newsletter there if you're interested in kind of seeing when we reopen and all that good stuff. So, and real quick, before you wrap up, I just want to thank Robert for joining us tonight. I don't think you guys understand that I emailed him about this event a few months ago, and within a couple hours, he was able to create these cocktails in his mind and email me a recipe back, which is pretty wild. And he did that without actually making them himself. So what you guys created today was the first time they were ever created. It all came from his mind. And so it's pretty neat that he's able to kind of do that on the fly. So thank you for joining us. And we appreciate your time.